What are you thankful for on day 7 of 30 Days of Thanks? And a special guidance on a bright and sunny day. We had had a wonderful time at Disney World all day long on this July in 1972, and it was still light out on our way back along Lake Okeechobee going to North Miami Beach. I looked on the side of the road and there was nothing but swamp for like 25 miles except for one little patch about the size of a football field. And I said, Linda, this is the only place we could have stopped. And I looked at her, and she was white as a sheet. It was 1446 BC in Egypt. The Israelites had been in the country as slaves for several centuries, and Moses had actually killed a man and then ran away and came back to rescue the people. God had told him to do that, and he had gone to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh would not let the people go. So plague after plague came down on the words of Moses, and God established those plagues, leading all the way up to the 10th plague, which was horrific. Finally, Pharaoh allowed the Egyptians to leave, and they did. And God gave them guidance by sending a pillar by fire by night so they could travel by night through the desert, and a cloud in a pillar by day so that they could be covered from the sun and travel by day during the daytime. This wonderful guidance by God by a pillar of fire by night and a pillar of cloud by day gave the Egyptians a chance to travel at a fairly steady pace day and night. Well, Pharaoh finally decided that he wanted to go after them and decided he didn't want them to leave Egypt at all. So he took 600 of the finest chariots and all of the chariots in Egypt and went after the Israelites. Finally, the Israelites came to the Red Sea, and there was no way that they could cross, so they thought. But they had the guidance of God, and God said to Moses to put his hands and the rod over the Red Sea. And when he did, God opened up the Red Sea, put a wall on one side and a wall on the other, and the Israelites traveled through the sea on dry ground and went right across to the other side, and the pillar came to the back of them. The pillar of cloud came to the back of them, and as the Egyptian army approached them, the Egyptian army could not see the Israelites because of the pillar that God had put between them, separated their vision from being able to see the Israelites. So knowing that the Israelites were traveling on the other side and it was dry ground, Pharaoh gave the command for the captains to lead the chariots and the Egyptian army into the Red Sea. And as the Israelites began to come out of the other side, God told Moses to place his hands and rod back over the Red Sea so that the waves could close. And as they did, the chariot wheels began to get stuck in the mud as they were traveling, and the vehicles were not able to move, and they were so deep into the travel of the Red Sea that they did not have time to escape and come back out, and the waves came crashing down upon them. And the next day, the Israelites were safely on the other side of the Red Sea, and Pharaoh's army was destroyed. God had given them the guidance. The guidance of God had saved the Israelites. It was in the early decades after Jesus had risen from the dead, and the church was being persecuted. And the first martyr was a man named Stephen, who was preaching the gospel and serving food to the widows and the orphans. And as he was doing this, he was stoned to death at the feet of a Pharisee named Saul. Paul then became convinced that his duty was to persecute the church and to put as many Christians in prison and to death as possible. He went to the leaders and got letters to go to Damascus so that the church could be further persecuted and people imprisoned and stop the spread of the gospel. However, God had different plans, and his guidance went this way. As Paul approached Damascus, a light came from heaven and shone around him and knocked him to the ground. Paul, lying there, said, "Who are you, Lord?" He says, "I'm Jesus, whom you are persecuting. Arise and go into Damascus, and a man named Ananias will come and meet you." When Paul arose, he could not see. He was blind for 3 days, didn't eat for 3 days. And an angel came and appeared to Ananias. And the Lord appeared to Ananias and told Ananias to go meet Paul. And Ananias said, "Paul, he's come with letters to persecute us." And God said, "He is mine." And the guidance of the Lord led Ananias to Paul, and he further explained the gospel to him. And Paul that day got his eyesight back and was baptized. And he immediately went into the synagogues and began to preach the risen Christ. I had just finished my first audit as an internal auditor for Keller Industries in North Miami Beach, Florida. And we were on our way to Disney World, Linda and I. And as we drove along Lake Okeechobee, there was swamp, especially on that side of the road, on the left side of the road. As we were driving, we noticed that the truck in front of us was only going about 50 miles an hour, and we were running late to get to see my brother when he took his break. He was going to get us into Disney World. And we wanted to be there on time, but it didn't look like we were going to make it. Problem was, there was no place to pass. 2 lanes, swamp on that side, what are you going to do? But it had a little bit of a straightaway, and I thought, I can make this pass. And so I began to pass this long trailer truck. And I pushed it up to 65 miles an hour. And as I did, I noticed that there was a car coming right at me the other way. There was no way I could pull back, and there was no way I could go forward. And so I was going at him, and I thought, oh my gosh, I've got to go off the road. And so I went off the road. And when I did, he went off the road. The other car went off the road, and we were both still heading straight at each other. And at the last split second, I turned again, and he did not. And whoosh, the car swished. It was that close. It couldn't have been any closer. And as my car coasted to a stop, I opened my door, and I looked back about a football field in back of me, and the other man was opening up his door in shock. And I looked over at my girlfriend, and her face was white as a sheet. That was the only place for 25 miles where we could have pulled off the road. God was our guiding light. God is calling you. Are you chosen? Well, if you've said yes to his call, yes, you are. Jesus said, "You are the light of the world. Let your light shine before men, and in doing so, they will see your good works."